Hello, boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen, Chads and Stacys, and also the incels. Welcome to Unapologetic Live. Happy Friday. Today we're going to be having a conversation about incels through the lens of Jordan Peterson, because he's been accused by Olivia Wilde of being the king of the incels. So we're going to ask the question, what are incels? Do they exist? If they exist, are they harmful? And if they're harmful, is Jordan Peterson the king? And should he be doing something about this? Also, we'll be surfing Reddit, answering some questions, and having some deeper discussions. Let's get into it. So we're going to start with Jordan Peterson. For those of you who are unaware, with the drama that ensued with the Don't Worry Darling movie coming out, Olivia Wilde, the director of said movie, accused Jordan Peterson of being a king of the incel community. For those of you who don't know what incels are, they are involuntarily celibate, typically men, which are men who are considered undesirable, have not really been touched by a woman, loved by a woman, don't have girlfriends, and are seemingly perpetually angry about it. Did I phrase that
guys who want to be with a girl but can't get one, basically.
Right, and we're going to go into the different definitions of it once we springboard off this Jordan Peterson video. We'll do the Merriam-Webster definition, and then we'll look at probably the more accurate one, which is from Urban Dictionary, which is so weird.
The based one, yeah.
It's so weird that Urban Dictionary is becoming more accurate than Merriam-Webster.
Well, Merriam-Webster and others have shown the willingness to change the definition of words based on modern woke or cultural trends. So,
right. You can't trust these hoes, as I like to say. Now, let's watch this Jordan Peterson video and see what we think.
I thought I had an opportunity to say some of the things that were necessary to say, and I enjoyed very much talking with you and meeting your sons as well, and appreciated the opportunity that you presented to me. And I appreciated the opportunity to talk a little bit about the so-called incels, these disaffected young men. I was talking to a friend, what would you call it, an associate, someone who has knowledge of Olivia Wilde, who had recently made comments about me being king of the incels. And it's probably worth pointing out that she married a multimillionaire prince. And so, right, so she's the absolute epitome of female hypergamy, that hypergamy that makes females very judgmental in their choice, as they should be. But for her to have nothing but contempt for men who are struggling forward to try to make themselves attractive to women is a sign of a kind of deep narcissism that, on the female side, I would say, that deeply affects our culture. And so it was good to have an opportunity to clear some of that up. I've talked to lots of young men around the world about how they might make themselves more attractive on the friendship and career and dating front. And that usually has to do with telling them that, well, they have to subject themselves to that harsh judgment. And if all the women are rejecting them, either because they're too timid to put themselves forward, or they don't have anything truly to offer, which is something like productive, stable, wise, judicious generosity in the highest order, why would they expect a woman to make herself vulnerable, especially on the childbearing front, to them? And so if everyone is telling you that you don't live up to the necessary standard, well, then you can demolish the standards, or you can put yourself together. And one of the things that's been really heartening on that front is that many of the young men who have been listening to the ideas I've been generating and promoting have, in fact, put themselves together. And they come to my shows and they're standing up straight and they're dressed in often a three-piece suit. And now they frequently have a girlfriend with them. And they say something like, I decided to start being authentic and tell the truth. And I decided to adopt some responsibility and to grow up. And all of a sudden, everything's better. And the problems I had are going away. And so that's the solution to the incel problem. And demonizing people for being lonesome and isolated is not exactly helpful.
Yeah, let's pause there and talk. There's so many things to unpack there. First of all, he talks about Olivia Wilde and this idea of female hypergamy and the fact that she's married, quote, a millionaire prince. So you have Olivia Wilde, who is the seemingly conventionally beautiful woman, looking down on men whom are conventionally unattractive, when she has the whole playing field right in front of her to pick whatever man she chooses.
Right. Very much a position of privilege.
Right. And so to come down and look at men who don't have that option, or maybe, as Jordan Peterson often states, have placed themselves in the position of not having that option, doesn't really make sense to me. And if you're going to label Jordan Peterson the king of the incels, I question why that is something that is particularly negative, because you are a person, Jordan Peterson is a person, who's trying to lead them down the path of getting out of that struggle that they're in.
Exactly. It's like you have to choose what do you want these men who are having a difficult time finding women, finding meaning in life, where do you want them to go? Do you want them to go to deeper down the rabbit hole of rejection, of not having meaning, of feeling hopeless and despairing of their life and despairing of their prospects of not being able to find a healthy relationship or finding a way to integrate healthily into society? Because what Olivia Wilde's approach of shaming them and saying, from my position of being rich and pretty and wanted, you lame incel losers, you suck. What do you think that's going to do? It's going to push them further down that rabbit hole. And then when a healthy alternative arises, like in someone like Jordan Peterson, who's saying, hey, you should shoulder responsibility for yourself. Hey, you should find meaning. You should not give in to nihilism. You should try to make something of yourself and better yourself and stand up straight with your shoulders back and go out there and face the world and go on your own hero's journey and adventure. Mm-hmm. That's a much healthier path that they can take than the one that Olivia Wilde is pushing them down. So for her to simultaneously push down incels and mock the alternative that could be healthy for them is just, you're the problem. Mm-hmm. The incels aren't the problem. The Jordan Peterson's not the problem. You're the problem. You're creating the mess.
Right. If you had this disaffected community of people who you seemingly think are very harmful to society, why would your solution be bullying and ridicule?
Exactly.
I think that would make them more disaffected, more extreme, and more harmful if that's your view of the incel community. Before we talk more about this, I want to give you guys a definitive definition of this, or at least a definition that you guys can get a broader view of what it means. According to Merriam-Webster, the definition of an incel is a person, usually a man. I've only ever heard it in reference to men, I will say.
Femcel is the new term on the other side.
Right.
That's for another day.
Yeah, that's for another deep dive. A person, usually a man, who regards himself or herself as being involuntarily celibate, meaning not engaging in sexual activity, and typically expresses extreme resentment and hostility towards those who are sexually active. You'll hear the term Chad and Stacy often. I think these probably started on message boards for people in this particular group and then grew outside of that as people outside of it adopted it. Now it's no longer primarily used, I would say. But that was a super meme for quite a while there. Urban Dictionary, which I have a feeling is going to give us a more acute definition here. Incel, short for involuntarily celibate, often built like a Discord mod, probably uses Reddit, gets no bitches, says the hard R while being whiter than Wonder Bread, smells like Axe body spray and or BO, plays COD, Call of Duty, and makes overused, quote, I identify as an attack helicopter, end quote, jokes. Has never felt the touch of another woman except that of his mother when she handed him snackies as a child. This one's far more insulting than the first definition.
Dude, dare I ask what the hard R thing means? I don't even know what that means.
He uses the hard R with the N-word.
Oh.
Like if you hop in a Fortnite lobby for a second and you hear the N-word literally a million times.
Yeah.
Always hard R for the most part.
Gotcha.
I will say. So an incel is a typically pretty nerdy, probably not the healthiest, probably lives with mommy in the basement type of guy, if you can picture that. Of course, it's going to come in so many more forms than just that, but that would be sort of the epitome of what it means to be
you can
an
get
incel.
The caricature's there in your mind. I think everyone kind of has that caricature and knows what this is referring to.
Right. And when you search incel on Google, one of the first things that pops up, of course, is a definition, but if you scroll down a little further, it's this story out of Ohio State University, and it's Ohio incel pleads guilty to planning to kill women in college. I haven't read this yet, so we're going to click it. And of course, this is going to coincide with the idea that incels are a particularly harmful and extreme community that is hell-bent on, what should we say, seeking out revenge for their status in society?
Yeah. It's an angry, nihilism. It's not feeling like you had a fair shake at life, so you're bitter at the world or bitter at the hand you're dealt, and then so what are you going to do with that anger and aggression? And you find a way to act out.
Right. So it says this guy pleaded guilty to attempting a hate crime after admitting that he planned to slaughter women in sororities and in college. Investigators found that the Ohio man had planned to kill as many as 3,000 people at a university and took steps to prepare for it. And there's his face. A 22-year-old man pleaded guilty on Tuesday to attempting a hate crime after admitting that he planned a mass shooting of women at Ohio University. Trezhenko at Hillsboro, Ohio, who posted on an incel website frequently and had firearms at home, had written notes about his plans to slaughter women and took steps to prepare for it, authorities said. Genko formulated a plot to kill women and intended to carry it out, says U.S. Attorney Kenneth L. Parker. He said in a statement, police first responded to a domestic call at Genko's house involving him and his mother in March of 2020. While searching the house, officers found a rifle and a handgun, as well as notes detailing his intent to kill as many as 3,000 people. Very ambitious. With an M16 rifle at an unnamed college. The training needed to carry it out, and secondary plans for an ambush in a busy area, according to court documents. So, of course, obviously this story is seemingly true. It's been vetted. This has happened. And this is the first thing that pops up when you find incel. It would be hard not to just couple those two things together, being involuntary celibate and being a terrorist and being an extremist, which is so often the conversations we're having surrounding this community. And that's fair. If you go on some of these message boards from incels, they can be pretty shocking.
Yeah, and again, it's people who are young men who are disaffected and angry at the world, and I think there's a lot of similarities here to what we know about the Uvalde shooter, so first off, thank God that this did not escalate and that this was found out before he was able to commit any violence. But the fact remains that we do have this problem as a society of disaffected young men, and it is a dangerous problem. And you can look at these stories like this in one of two ways. It's like, well, there's this festering incel community online, and I'm going to associate them with this right-wing alt-right pipeline, and they're doing this, and it's all the fault of people like Jordan Peterson, who's king of the incels. Or you can really ask yourself, like, why? What is creating this? What are we as a society and a culture doing that is producing the disaffectedness of these young men?
Right.
And again, to kind of point to Jordan Peterson as the cause of it, rather than someone who's recognizing this problem and speaking to these young men and
proposing a solution.
Yeah. To me, is so backwards.
It is really, really backwards. It's like the community existed far before Jordan Peterson existed. I think this has been something that's been in existence, not necessarily under the term incel, but disaffected young men who can't find women have existed for centuries and will continue to exist. And I would argue that we probably all go through a period of inceldom. Like, if you really want to think about it, it depends on whether or not you couple that word with like being a terrorist or an extremist. If you do, then I wouldn't say we all go through that period. Sure. But we all go through a period in our lives of like being unattractive, seeing people who are attractive, seeing people who get women or men and going, oh, I really want that, and not knowing what to do with yourself in order to achieve that for yourself. And every human being consistently across all space and time has sought out and wanted love.
Yeah, if you've been through middle school, you've been through that phase of insecurity and trying to find, how I become someone who's socially accepted, how I become someone who's attractive to the opposite sex or the people I'm interested in. And that's a normal part of growing up and maturing and look, reality is reality, and people respond to things that they respond to, and they're attracted to things that they're attracted to. And I think part of the process of growing up is figuring out who you are, going out into the world, and then there's that negotiation, that back and forth with reality of, okay, people don't accept me when I go this way, or people don't accept this part of me, or whatever, and you deal with that, and you say, well, is that a reflection on them and them being a bully, or is this a reflection on, am I being socially awkward in some way, and can I fix myself, can I improve myself? And that's just that's growing up, that's maturing, that's just part of life. And anyway, I think we're creating a situation, though, as a culture in which the people who are falling off and losing hope in that process and don't have the strength to go through it and become healthy, integrated individuals through that process of maturity, they fall off on the wayside, and then they find these communities, and then this stuff festers. And that's the stuff that we need to focus on and try to reach into and give them an alternate path.
Right. And I'm all for, what do they call it? Radical personal responsibility. I don't think there's any one person who can be charged with the crime of creating incels. I think people make their own choices. If you're going to fall down this path and choose to be violent because of it, you've created that situation for yourself. Yeah. But when we look at a person like Jordan Peterson versus Olivia Wilde, who's more likely to be responsible? I don't want to say responsible, but who's more likely to play a part in creating an incel? It's not Jordan Peterson, because Jordan Peterson, if you take even a moment to look through his videos, says, men, you're responsible for yourselves. And if a woman doesn't want you, it's not your opportunity to go, what's wrong with women? It's your opportunity to look at yourself and go, what's wrong with me? And what can I do to be better? What responsibility and accountability can I take on to make myself more attractive to women? Whereas Olivia Wilde makes a video or a movie like Don't Worry, Darling, and spoilers if you haven't seen the film and you intend to see the film, which is all about disaffected men who then take on this violent course of action to essentially kidnap women and force them into their 1950s fever dream fantasy. So a man watches Jordan Peterson, an incel, and goes, oh, well, this man is putting an accusation and laying a claim on me. I need to be better. An incel watches Olivia Wilde and goes, oh, beautiful women are disgusted by me. They think I'm horrible. They think I want to kidnap them. They think I want to force them into this subjugated form of existence. I'm angry about that. And they're never going to love me. And nobody's ever going to want me. And I'm never going to reach this caliber in life where I'm accepted by society. Which one tips the scale and maybe creates an extremist environment?
Exactly. Oh, do you have something, Scott?
Yeah. I was going to say, to your point earlier where you were like, oh, why don't they offer a solution? Like Olivia Wilde is sitting there. All she is doing is critiquing. Yep. Whereas Jordan is offering a critique, but also tangible relative solutions to go about correcting that. And I think that's so important. And it seems to be the problem of the left in general, where all they are is just looking for that issue to critique solely, but to never offer a reasonable, rational solution to correcting it. It's all about, let's just remove that aspect purely from society and then we'll be okay. But it's like, that's not how reality works.
It's not how reality works. It actually, in fact, does the opposite. And it's like we tried to go and search on different social media platforms like Incel just to see what people were posting. You go on TikTok, you can't search for it. Similarly, you can't search for things like White Lives Matter or All Lives Matter on TikTok because they think that these are derogatory things that you could be looking up to radicalize yourself. Censorship causes radicalization, okay? So you have these young men who are looking for people who they can relate to, find the likes of Jordan Peterson, or don't because he's censored, and then they go, oh, okay, not him, maybe Andrew Tate. Oh, not Andrew Tate. Maybe like a Sneeko character or whatever. And I'm not saying these guys are inherently harmful or anything like that, but then gone off the internet. It cascades. And it snowballs into, oh my gosh, where can I find anybody who is going through what I'm going through? I need community because we are tribalistic in that sense. And then they go, oh, I found this like little sub-community of people who have this secret website who are talking about the things that I'm talking about. And it's men who have already gone down that same experience of trying to find people and are now at peak anger, posting about their experiences, posting in this hole of the internet where nobody's going to find them. And they radicalize each other. And that is true. Like people see that as like a big word, but yeah, they do radicalize each other and they push each other further and further down the path because nobody else is willing to communicate with them.
Right. And how did they get down there in the first place? We've created a situation in which society that says there's no place for you here. There's no room for you here. And going back to what Scott was saying about Olivia Wilde, if you ask her, like, what is your message to young men? What is your solution? That like, what do you want them to do? I don't know what her answer would be, but I imagine it would be something along the lines of, just based on what you can take away from the film, is men have had the power historically. So it's time for the men to uncenter themselves and just become allies and just become male feminists and just let women have their time. And it's similar to the message of the movie Nope, but on racial lines of like white people have been at the center, and now they've historically oppressed the other groups, and so now it's time for white people to be decentered. There's no place for you. Shut up and just be the silent ally. And the problem with that type of thinking is just it does not create a society where you can have healthy interactions between races, between genders. It doesn't, you're excluding people, and that is going to foster resentment. And I think a lot of this incel phenomenon that we're seeing, and the people going further and further down the rabbit hole, is that, hey, we've created a situation in which there is no place for you to healthfully integrate into society, and so you're just pushed out further and further along the margins. And then the further down you go, we just shame you even further. And what do you think that's going to create?
Right. It's going to create extremism. It's going to create acts of terrorism like the one that could have been carried out at Ohio State University. And again, it's not to place blame on people, but it is to say that one action often leads to the other action. And you have to acknowledge that. I'm curious to get into the discussion of, I'm of the opinion probably that incels have always been around, but it seems like we're inching into an era of violence when it comes to it. What has ushered this in? Is it this idea that men and women are equal, and now women are being sexually promiscuous, and they're seeking out the top 20% of men, and that bottom 80% is just sitting there disaffected, not being able to find anybody? Is it men's fault? Is it a lack of meaning? That is, men don't strive for anything? Is it a lack of role models?
Yeah. I think
all the above.
Yeah,
all the above.
It's like, how do you slice up that pie chart to say it's
right.
like it's 30% just a lack of meaningness, it's 30% the decentering of man and not having a place for healthy masculinity in our culture. I mean, I don't know what the exact percentages are, but you can see these factors that play, like social media and algorithms that playing into it. It's definitely a thing. We went on we'll get into it maybe later, but we're on Reddit yesterday, and there was a thread about who are modern role models for men or women, like in that are famous, and we like racking our brains. We're like, I don't even know. You have to think back of historical figures or heroes in mythology and stuff. It's very difficult to find just role models in society.
Yeah, and I say all the above in jest, but there's one part we've talked about a couple times where it's like, the third wave feminism is essentially telling young women that there's this Prince Charming out there, there's this perfect man that's out there, and I think that's also part of what's like an underlying factor to this negative view towards all men, because no one ever really lives up to that Prince Charming aspect, and I feel like it's just compounding itself, because anybody who doesn't reach that could potentially be just lesser or in that incel category. Exactly. So I feel like with all those factors are there, I just feel like the insistent feminist thought of no one's good enough for you, I'm always going to be the funniest, I'm always going to be the best, I'm going to be the smartest, all that kind of stuff, I think just lends toward men not feeling wanted and lesser.
Yeah, so we've got that. We've got the lack of role models and meaning. You've got the fatherlessness problem that we're dealing with right now, which is across the spectrum. A lot of people say it's a black problem, and it does disproportionately affect the black community, but it's all racist problem right now. And, you would think, and my previous self would have thought, oh, well, men are being raised by women. That's a good thing. They're going to know how to communicate with women better because they're with a single mom this whole time. They're with their sisters or whatever. This is going to help them build relationships with women, when in fact it does the exact opposite. You now have a feminized man who's only ever socialized in a female-centric environment and now doesn't know how to communicate like a man, which is what women want.
Yeah. You need... As young men need something to aspire to, something like a battle to fight, a vision to have, something to overcome, and that's like all of our old movies, like 300 or Gladiator or what's the Saving Private Ryan. It's not about glorifying the violence of war, but it's about seeing those stories of heroes and people who. Men who went out and did something great and fought for their family or fought for their country or whatever, and that's becoming something. I've been watching this Rings of Power series just to follow. I keep bringing it up, but the way they're writing it now in modern Hollywood is you can't have a strong male character who's a hero. They're all, it's like there's a woman in every little cadre of the show, and she's the Mary Sue, as they say, like basically can do no wrong, has no flaws, is not relatable as a real human being because they're just perfect. Yep. And then all around them, the men who are in Tolkien's lore as these, tall, mythological, awesome heroes who are leading armies and accomplishing great things. And they're basically just become subservient to these women in the shows, which again, here and there, that's fine if it's like serves a higher purpose in the show, but it's so clear from the writing that like, this is the world that we want to portray. And there's not a place for that masculinity. There's not a place for that strength and leading and courage and bravery and all those themes that are so, they're so evident through historically the stuff that we've associated with masculinity. And now we've just erase that. And I think that's a lot of what we're seeing now is just that there's men are trying to fill the void but they're not being allowed to be men. Which is so weird because it's like incels are ridiculed for like being lame and not getting women. And then women are angry at like the top 20% of men because they're with too many women and they're like F-boys and they're all around and they're sleeping with a girl here and sleeping with a girl there. But you're creating that. When you have 80% of women vying for 20% of men, guess what? They're going to sleep with a bunch of women who are offering themselves up to them. And then you look at the other 80% of men who don't get anything and you're like, ew, you're lame and you're disgusting. It's like this whole cyclical problem that's just gonna keep continuing. It's so weird to me. Yeah. And to your point, Taylor, about the lack of storytelling with prominent male figures. It's almost as though like the old mythological or archetypal stories, they displayed men as facing these insurmountable odds, which this world presents people with every single day. Even civilizations at large. But these stories used to show and depict these people facing these insurmountable odds and facing it with courage and going at it and finding a way through it, finding a way to overcome them. But removing that in the culture at large just makes everybody confused, especially young men. And right now, they're facing, these incels, you could say, could potentially be facing this insurmountable odds of trying to attract women in this day and age, and they're going about it in the way that they think is best, on the keyboards and whatnot, and in the shadows. But that's because we've abandoned them with these stories of greatness of hey, you can do this if you put your mind to it and you push through it. So it's just storytelling in Hollywood at large is just vapid.
I don't know, man. It's wild. I'm like, it's Olivia Wilde.
It's all Olivia's fault.
But I think Jordan Peterson and many others in his space are offering a solution to that. And the solution ultimately within the bounds of our society today is like, you gotta start getting fit. You gotta go work to get a better job. You gotta make yourself somebody who's like courteous and generous towards women, but also like... what women are you going to be courteous and generous towards? Because there's a lack of good women too. Yeah. There really is.
Yeah, it's a mess on both sides.
It's a mess all over the place.
This reminds me too of when Dennis was here reacting to the Andrew Tate stuff. He talked about how traditionally our culture would encourage young men to reel in the parts of their nature that tend to be excessive, and for that it's like being sexual or like aggressive and violent. And so for men should learn to tame those darker angels of their nature, and that is the formidable thing. That is the heroic thing, the thing that we celebrate. And it's weird. It's interesting that when you talk about like women competing for this top 20% of men who are basically a-holes, who because they are exhibiting this toxic masculinity where they haven't tamed those parts of their nature, and because our culture doesn't value that anymore, or doesn't tell young men, doesn't acknowledge how men are. We're like, oh, there's no differences, or men are just inherently bad. And so there's not this like thing where hey, if you want to be a good man, you should be strong. Like this, Jordan Peterson talks about this of like, you should be a monster. You should be strong and be like it's Beauty and the Beast. You know, that's the traditional like romance story. If you have the beast, but it's tamed, and you can keep the worst parts of your nature under wraps. And on the women's side, we even discuss that. But Dennis Prager, we talked about in the episode where we talked about his article of women doing disproportionate damage to society right now. He said their excessive nature on their side that has to be tamed in is the emotional stuff.
Right.
And anyway, it's like we can just acknowledge these simple realities and create a culture and create a value structure in which we tell young men and young women to keep a guard on the parts of your nature that you need to keep reeled in, and that's going to create better outcomes. But instead, we're either saying when men and women are all the same, or women can do no wrong, men can only do wrong, and I think we're just so confused, and young men and young women are so confused, and it's creating so much dysfunction in how they go about having relationships with another, and dysfunction in society at large.
I'm curious to see like a longitudinal study on incels that like achieve jumping out of that space, and whether or not they jump to a place of like having a long-term relationship with respect for women, or whether or not they jump to a place of just sleeping around and still viewing women as inferior to men, because I'm curious to see just what the connection is, because a lot of people of course go and show the worst parts of themselves online, especially on anonymous like message boards. You're going to put your most salacious, most forward, the darkest, most intrusive thoughts you have on the internet. I'm curious if that translates to real life at the end of the day.
Yeah, or even just hearing real world examples. Like if you've had experience with this where you felt disaffected and were not able to have relationships, but then you got a hold of yourself. Like I hear Jordan Peterson tell some of these stories a lot, but I want to hear, if this has been something that you've experienced and you found a healthy way out of this incel mentality, like let us know, DM me or whatever, and we'd love to share your story.
Yeah, that'd be great, because I imagine some of them jump out of it and they're like, oh, I just found a really good woman and this woman loves me and this is the woman that I want to be with. And then I imagine some of them jump out of it and then they're like, fuck women, I want to sleep with as many people as I want now that I'm at this space. You know what I mean? Yeah,
I think we see the examples on both sides. Or actually, let me rephrase it. We see the bad examples. We see the ones who go down the route of the Andrew Tate style, masculinity, F women, and I'm going to
terrorism and shit.
Collect them like Pokemon, as Nico said. And then we see the ones who, go down the terrorist violence route and don't tame those better parts of their nature. But I think we should tell more stories of people who do it the right way.
Right. That was our incel deep dive for today. I don't even know if that's a deep dive. I feel like we didn't even scratch the surface of that subject matter. But let us know your thoughts down below. And again, if you have any personal stories of your own experiences with this, we would love to hear more and love to get your perspective on it, because it's not an issue. It's hard to know a lot about this issue because you can't search it anywhere without finding just like the typical take on what it is and who these people are. And you don't hear from the people who self-identify.
Yeah, we haven't tried going down the rabbit hole of the incel websites and reading about
Not yet.
them.
I've seen a few of them.
Another day.
Yeah, I don't think we'll bring that to your eyes. Maybe I'll just experience that and tell you about it. Now let's hop to some Reddit surfing. Taylor pulled out these different Reddit pages that he found, and we're going to have a discussion about it.
Yeah, we just went on Unpopular Opinions Reddit and found some of the more controversial ones this past month. So we're going to look at those and kind of discuss, agree, disagree, or what's going on beneath the surface of these.
Here we go. This is the euphemism adult performer is ridiculous, and pornographic actors and actresses shouldn't get to own the word adult because they're uncomfortable with their job title. I think this is reading into it a little bit much. I think, let's see. We sort of discussed this. What are other people that you could refer to as adult performers? Like people on Broadway, people who perform in the street, people who do magic shows, all these different things are technically adult performers.
You mean like they're performing as an adult,
as
or
an
performing
adult
for adults?
They're performing, well, I guess.
You know what I mean?
I mean, it can mean, I think this person is saying it can mean so much. Why does it just mean sex work?
Exactly. I think that, and we are sacrificing some of the meaning. We talk so much about the meaning of words in today's day and age. And I think they have a point in the sense that, we're by defining using this euphemism to refer to anytime you say adult, it means it's pornographic or sexual in nature. It's like, well, you're using the utility you could have to say this is a play for adults or by adults. There's a cost that we're paying just to be nice as this euphemism. I don't know.
But I feel like they're assuming, like they said, because they're uncomfortable with their job title. I don't think people refer to themselves because they're uncomfortable about it. Like, why do we call it an adult video store? It's because we don't want probably sex shop in the middle of a street where kids are walking by. So we put adult video store. So
right.
You know what I mean? So I feel like there's a utility to using the word adult and adult performer.
Yeah. And it's like you're driving down the street and it says adult video store or whatever. It's a little less like...
A little less in your face and like XXX.
For kids in your backseat. Like, yeah, if it's porn shop or whatever, it's like, okay, well, Mommy, what's that?
Mommy, what's a porn shop?
I don't know.
Yeah, what do you think, Scott?
I was thinking, couldn't this be like the flip side of controlling language on the conservative end of things? Like we are having an issue right now on the conservative side, the right side, with the controlling and manipulation of language to fit a goal or a need. So, I mean, just playing devil's advocate, like this could
be a little controlling.
A little controlly in that sense. I don't personally think that's a bad thing with this situation, especially because it deals with children, or it can be misconstrued by children. So I don't know. I'm just throwing that out there because it is a sensitive topic for
honestly.
everyone.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I mean, I think this goes back farther than like some ideologue is trying to manufacture a narrative with this. It's kind of just like this is just kind of how our culture developed a way to have a euphemism for this that's a little less on the nose. So, and I don't think that's inherently problematic, and making a huge deal out of it does feel a little bit, like you said, like, Karen-ish.
Yeah, and people seem to agree. It says the history of the term adult to mean sexual goes way past the modern context of adult performer. Think like adult drinks, adultery. That makes, sense to me. It's just like a historical.
Okay.
Good.
So nothing burger?
Nothing for me.
So,
I would
this
say
this is an unpopular opinion. You disagree with this opinion.
Yeah, I disagree with this opinion. Okay, next.
Get out of here, Karen.
Netflix is not entertainment, it's social engineering. Every movie on Netflix, white man is the villain, black man is the hero, gay guy is the voice of reason, women has the balls, dad is an idiot, mom is the breadwinner, children are sexualized. Netflix is social engineering, not entertainment. It's depends on what you watch. I think there's plenty of things on Netflix now that are not that at all.
Right. Yeah. To say it's on Netflix, but as a generalization about the themes and the how Hollywood wants to portray the world generally,
right.
I do think that this is pretty accurate characterization.
Yeah.
And I think that's why this rings true for a lot of people. But of course, you can find stuff on Netflix that doesn't follow this to a T. But I think by and large, this guy's onto something with what's going on in Hollywood right now.
Yeah. I wonder how much it actually affects real world perception of people. Like, again, I'm like, how do you study this? How do you research it? How do you get tangible evidence of how this is affecting people? I wonder if you just had kids watch a bunch of movies with this sort of formula going on, and then after the movies gave them a questionnaire about how they feel about each of these individual groups, and just probably ask them before, then have them watch the movie, and then ask them again, or something like that. I'd be curious to see what the answer would be, if you can actually socially engineer a distinct opinion towards each of these groups.
Yeah, I mean, what is it? Was it Goebbels? If Joseph Goebbels said, if you repeat a lie often enough, it becomes the truth.
Right.
And because we've seen these TikTok videos of teachers who come on TikTok and they're like, I told my students my pronouns and they laughed at me and said that I'm not a shark self or whatever,
right?
And that hurt my feelings. And it's like, no, they're just kids, and they realize that you're being ridiculous, and the way that you are portraying reality is inconsistent with what they know to be common sense reality.
Yep.
But when we're talking about consistently portraying, okay, this type of person can do no wrong, the white men are always the bad guy or whatever.
Yep.
That's a little more subtle,
It
and
is.
it's easier to create a sort of a subconscious perception of the world, and you start to apply what you see over and over again in these shows and in these narratives to how you interpret the real world. And so it's not as easy to just be like, you're being ridiculous. It's not every white man is a villain. It's like, I mean, in the back of your mind, you're going to have that as like the backdrop for your thinking. And that's a dangerous thing.
Yeah, that's like to your question earlier about like doing these studies and finding these things. I mean, I feel like entertainment, art, all this kind of stuff, there is a segment that is cut out for stuff to push a narrative or something along these lines, and that's propaganda. The thing is with this, what you were saying, Taylor, is it's covert, and it's much more subtle, and it's done in a much more artistic way to where it could truly change the minds. Whereas propaganda, it is proven to work, but over time it seems like the wheels fall off because reality cuts through.
Right.
And we saw that with the USSR over and many times over history. But yeah, this is a little more seedy because it is so covert.
Yeah, I was trying to think, what things did I watch as a kid that influenced my opinion in the real world? And it's hard to think back to your childhood and what you watched and how that affected you. But nothing truly comes to mind. But maybe it's because I watched pretty good children's programming. I was watching like Mr. Rogers.
Yeah, and to be fair, like to your point, Scott, like I saw an Elon Musk tweet the other day where it was like a meme that he shared, but it said basically like everything is propaganda, some's just more propaganda than others. And even like I grew up with my parents showing me like Bible, like Gospel Bill, who was like this cowboy Bible hero, and stuff like that. And that is, I guess you could call that propaganda.
It is indoctrination. It is propaganda. Yeah.
But so it's a question of what are the values and what is the worldview that you're trying to instill in young people. And I think we have a war of worldviews in our culture right now, where there is sort of the more traditional Judeo-Christian way of thinking, or even just, modernism, enlightenment type of thinking that's rational. And then there's this activist, 1960s and on, postmodernism, hyperfeminism, all this stuff. And that there's that battleground is happening in our media coverage. It's happening in Hollywood. And I think just as a parent right now, you've got to know and choose and be aware. And I think, to be fair too, it's not necessarily the worst thing in the world for your children to understand how other people are thinking in the world or how other people are attempting to portray the world. And you don't want to create a situation where there's like sheltered and never see another worldview. But you do have to know what your values are and define them and make sure that you inculcate them to your kid. As they're going out there in the world, because if you don't, other forces are at work trying to influence your kids. Yep,
100%. And they're, I've thought about this in so many ways. Everybody who gets a hold of your children in any way, shape, or form is going to try to give them their ideas in some way or another. Like, I was having a conversation with my boyfriend. We talk about the future and all this different stuff, and whether or not you leave your kids with a babysitter or a nanny, and whether you like it or not. And I'm not saying there's something wrong with having a babysitter watch your kids or a nanny watch your kids, but when you hand your kid off to somebody else, they're not going to parent in the way that you see fit. They will always parent in the way that they see fit. When somebody comes into your child's life, they don't set their values at the door and then ask you, what would you like me to do for your children? And I'm going to do that. As soon as you're away, they do what they think is best, always, across the board. It doesn't matter who is involved. So you have to be so careful about who you leave your kids with, what you leave your kids with, what your kids are consuming, because it's always somebody else's view of what's good for them.
Yeah, especially in modern times. Like decades ago in the US, we had a much more integrated, like shared, close-knit culture and more shared values, to where you could send your kid to public school and, not be worried that the teacher was so far off from your values, and there was a stronger level of respect for that. Like, hey, this is a safe space, quote unquote, where I'm not going to attempt to impose my values. I'm going to do my job, which is, the parents are aware of this curriculum. They're aware of what's going on in the classroom, and I'm going to do my job and stay within the bounds of that. And now we've seen enough evidence from libs of TikTok to quash that idea. And I think it is, with increasing polarization, young teachers that are activists come out of university and stuff, and they see it as their job job to socialize your children and to educate them and indoctrinate them in their worldview. And that's a scary thing. And so I think that's a newer phenomenon, or I guess it's always been a thing that you want to be protective of your kids and be aware of what they're being exposed to and other people trying to influence them. But I'd say in modern times, especially, it's like all gas, no brakes. And like, I'm immediately trying to influence your kid as much as I possibly can. I'm not respecting the space of like, hey, I need to draw lines. I'm just a teacher. You know what I mean? There's way less trust you can have as a society now.
It's because we used to have rules, and it used to be like, I didn't know a thing about my teachers, and you went into school. I didn't know whether or not my teachers had kids, unless the kids went to the school. I didn't know whether or not my teachers were married. I didn't know whether or not they were religious, unless you caught a glimpse of maybe a cross they were wearing underneath their shirt. I didn't know anything about teachers, so much so, and this is probably normal for any kid, but when you see your teachers outside of school, you're like, oh my gosh,
it's weird,
that's my teacher, because you're just this person that I see in the school and I know nothing about, but you teach me math. And now it's just like, I know my teacher's whole life. I know my teacher's girlfriend. I know my teacher. I know my teacher's pronouns. Yep. I know where my teacher lives. I talk to my teacher all the time about my life and everything. And we've just overstepped a boundary, I think.
Yeah, we don't respect we don't respect those shared spaces. I think about like in NFL, Scott, in football, like everything's become politicized, and we don't have these spaces in our world and in our culture where it's like we're going to keep this to be what it's supposed to be. It's just sports. It's just movies. This is teaching. And it's much better when we keep these places neutral, and then parents can teach their kids what they want to teach. You can leave politics and debate politics in the forum that's appropriate for those, but we're not going to politicize everything. We're not going to make everything divisive and you have to take sides on things. And that is something lamentable with where we are as a society right now, that those sacred spaces, those shared spaces, those spaces that, okay, I'm not going to inject anything political, I'm going to keep this, open and neutral, that those are disappearing fast, and that is not a positive development.
No, not at all. And it's going to happen with everything, unfortunately, because we've decided that it's important in everything. In everything. Okay. Let's move on to the subject matter of toxic parents and toxic children. Here's one. If it's okay for children of toxic parents to go no contact, meaning we do not speak, no family events, I do not text, I do not visit, then it's okay for parents to go no contact with their toxic children. This applies only once they're 18. Otherwise, of course, it is child abuse or neglect. So, of course, this depends on your definition of toxic.
Contextual.
What does toxic mean? If toxic means you're a parent who's an alcoholic and beats your child, and your child's like, I'm 18, I don't want to talk to you anymore or see you anymore. Fair enough. And the same could be said for a parent, although I do think the dynamic is different for parents. So for me, my immediate thought is, as a parent, you chose to bring this child into the world, okay? Your child did not choose to have you as their parent. You chose to have this child, and you chose to say, I'm going to be the protector and the caretaker for this child. And you've reached that point of 18. That child never stops being your child.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it depends, like you said, on what you're calling toxic. And it also depends, like, what does you moving on in a healthy direction in life look like? And sometimes that can look like making amends as best you can with your family, keeping some kind of line of communication open, having your boundaries and keeping those up and having on your guard. It doesn't mean you let them back into your life to where they can continue hurting you, but it does mean that you can like have a minimum level of connection. Or, it may be the healthy thing to say, no, I can't handle any of that, or they're just completely, utterly toxic, and I have to keep them cut off. But I think a lot of times when people cut other people off, it's like you're in a way holding on to that hurt, or you can be. But that's not always the case. Sometimes it's necessary. So this is just a situation that it requires a lot of nuance. And I do think, generally speaking, people are bad at finding ways to healthily mend relationships and are too quick to cut people off and think that that's a solution, when in reality you're not healed of whatever it was, and you're not healing the situation, and it's going to continue to cause more dysfunction. And so anyways, that's my take on it.
Yeah, no, I was going to add to that and saying, like, I know we talked about a video last week where, it was a son of immigrant parents talking about how, like, I'm going to cut you off because or it might have been in the realm of like marriage, but I'm going to cut you off because this relationship is not serving me. I think to your point, Taylor, I think a lot of people in this day and age, or the younger generations, are ready to just cut things off because it's not working out for them, or they're not feeling okay and happy and comfortable and whatnot. But they don't realize that there is more of that happiness, more of that comfort, more of that resolution on the back end of turmoil if you're just willing to cut through all of the chaos and trying to find a way to mend things with somebody as close to you as blood. There's something to be said for that. And that bond is unbreakable. It's there's nothing deeper in my opinion on this planet. But it's just sad to see people ready to drop relationships, like it were nothing, and not fight through things.
Yeah, I'm taking toxic with a grain of salt in this, in a lighter sense, and thinking like my parents have different political beliefs than me, or my child is, not in like the abusive, physically abusive sense, and we certainly, and it's because I think we're so scared of being uncomfortable. We've all run from discomfort, when discomfort and uncomfortability is one of the strongest things that you can actually induce in your life. Like, you should bring about discomfort in your life.
Yeah, there's something to be said for like Scott was saying, working through things. But I can hear people already watching saying, well, I'm in an abusive family situation.
See, that's different.
And I agree, that's different. But also, like, working through trauma, part of getting past it is getting to a place where it doesn't have a hold over you. And sometimes the inability to even, like, I can't see their face, I can't look at it, that it can be evidence that it still has some kind of hold over you that you could be free of if you were to push through. But again, I'm not a therapist, and I don't want to say that all situations are like that. There certainly are times where cutting someone off is an appropriate response. But I do think that, to Scott's point, that, if there's hope, you should try.
Yeah. Physical and emotional abuse are unacceptable.
Yeah.
Just depends on what your definition of.
Yeah, and that's never to say
the
it's
second,
justified.
The latter is.
Yeah, exactly.
Right,
so
right.
I don't think we have to go further.
I think you guys get it. I think you guys got it. This next one, 7.5K upvotes. Being a woman online is like being a minor celebrity. Out of curiosity, I made a fake post on one of those dating subreddits, and my inbox exploded. I'm assuming this is a man. I had over 200 people trying to talk to me at once. They weren't all idiots. As a guy, so a guy masquerading as a woman. As a guy, I've spent weeks just trying to make one regular platonic friend online, and it's difficult as shit. You post everywhere, and you're lucky to get one person that talks to you, and ghost within 2 days, of course. It's not
okay.
If you're a woman, so he says he posted on a woman's dating subreddit. First of all, that's not a platonic relationship. So he said, as a guy, I've just trying to make one regular platonic relationship online is very difficult. Well, if you go on a dating subreddit, you're not making platonic relationships.
Yeah,
you're making guys.
So much wrong with this approach.
Yeah.
If that's your goal, if your goal is to find a platonic friendship, don't pose as a woman in a dating subreddit.
Right.
That's a already sexualized, romantic environment that people are looking for a certain thing. And you already know, like, what is it, like 75% of Tinder users are men or whatever. Like, I don't know the exact stats, insane. But it's vastly more men go on dating, especially Reddit, dating subreddits than women. And so, of course, you're going to get a disproportionate amount of attention. Right.
A woman could stand on the street and say, I want a guy to date me, and guys would line up to date her. So, I mean, this is not really a good experiment or test to figure out what you want to figure out. But let's look past that part. Being a woman online is like being a minor celebrity. I mean, it depends on what you mean. If you mean that all celebrities also get sexually harassed and sexual inquiries on any given day, then being a woman online is like being a minor celebrity.
Right. That's a fact of life. You will get more attention as a female online, generally speaking. Of course. But the nature of that attention that you're getting is not people who want to platonically be your friends and are interested in your ideas and your personality and your character and want to know about your hopes and dreams and be friends with you. It's sexualized attention. It's attention because they're attracted to you, and you know what I mean? That's where it starts. And so that there's a massive grain of salt. So to like go online and be like, well, it's
big difference.
It's not fair that women get more attention online. It's like, okay, but the nature of that attention is not really desired or desirable, and it comes with it comes with a lot of baggage that you don't, be careful what you wish for, guy.
Right.
Yeah, their intent is there. The fact that they're even on that subreddit is like that's all they're looking for. Like, I don't know. They're not looking for friendship, dude. Like, sorry. So I don't understand that at all.
I will say though, what do you guys think? Do you think women make friends easier than men make friends not with their counterparts? So not like men making friends with women, but women making friends with other women.
With other women?
Yeah, versus men making friends with men. Yeah. Who makes friends easier?
Women with women, I would think.
You think?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I think that
is it equal?
It's pretty individualized, but I would put a slight edge on women just because women are
just have
more
that propensity
talkative,
to be compassionate
easier,
and nicer.
Yeah, exactly. More agreeable. Higher in agreeableness psychometrically, literally. Yeah. And that's going to lend itself.
Yeah. I would also have to put the caveat there. It depends on like the age grade, because like
life stage,
middle school, high school, it might be a little harder for females than males. But
that would make sense. Yeah. Okay. Interesting. And I'm assuming this is an adult guy. It's hard to make friends as an adult, period, I think.
Yeah.
Depending on like what you do and who you are, especially if you're trying to make them online. It's a pretty difficult arena.
Yeah. Is there like, there are modes, I think, on like Bumble or Tinder where you can like do it just friends.
Mm-hmm. So. But guys use that stuff and then they make friends with girls and then they're like, how do I get out of this friend zone?
Oh man.
Yeah,
which is an incel move, we might say.
Maybe. I don't know. Maybe it's a very sneaky, conniving move.
Well, it's interesting because we were talking about JBP and his take on all this kind of stuff. He's also said that there are a lot of men out there who, in order to gain an advantage with their female counterparts or those that they're interested in, they will assimilate with the interests of the female solely for the opportunity to get in with them.
Oh yeah.
So you have all the beta males in whatnot that are just championing feminism and whatnot. There is something to be said. Like maybe they're trying to get an in and gain a step up on other males so that they can go about their business. So even on these dating sites,
which never works. Girls never want to be with the beta simp who's just like, oh, I'm the male feminist
now.
No, almost like. I mean, I guess that's more of the modern phenomenon. But traditionally speaking,
women get tricked.
By becoming that guy that is just like,
oh,
I'm the ally.
Right. Mm-hmm. Women don't fall for that. And men fall for that. Men fall for the guy's girl, 100%. And like girls who curate their personalities for men and then they find out it's fake. Like
doesn't take whatever.
After she's pregnant. Guys will take whatever, but they seek out girls who act like they are like in with the boys. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it works one way and probably not the other, I think.
I think so.
Yeah. Last one here. I desperately need a sanity check. Is there anyone else here who is completely done with conservative men and doesn't care about their feelings? American 25 woman here. I recently made a friend with a man while I was out and about playing Pokemon Go. I guess that's something people still do. At least you're going outside. We started texting and had known each other for about 2 weeks before he told me that he's conservative and not to judge. At that, I am judging you extremely hard and I'll never be your friend. I'll never be friends with somebody who votes in oppressive bigots who don't even have more than 2 brain cells to rub together. This guy said that I was being a bit extreme and judgmental. I wish I cared. I have one less constitutional right now and you voted this trash in. Bye-bye. I'm so completely done with conservatives and I don't even care to ask what the details of their personal views are and what legislation they support. I don't care. F all the way off. Quick edit. First, thank you kindly for the supportive words.
Getting awarded for this.
Yeah, and a couple awards. Whoa. Thank you. Was not expecting this. I'm equally frustrated with both conservative men and women. Well, no, scratch that. While conservative women may have absolutely abhorrent politics, nobody is more butthurt than a conservative man who can't get his blank wet. Wow.
Charming young lady.
What a charmer. I bet there's guys lining up to date that one. I don't even know what to say other than like, is this a femcel? Is this a woman who does not get men?
No,
I don't know.
I just think she's somebody
she sounds
who
horrible.
Has a worldview. Like it's like what's the saying? The right thinks the left is wrong. The left thinks the right is evil.
Yeah.
And that's the energy I'm getting here. It's just like I am so 100% confident in the perfect morality of my worldview and the abhorrent immorality of your worldview that you don't even deserve a spot. You're not even worthy of the benefit of the doubt or friendship. She said, like, I don't care about getting into the nuances of your thoughts. All I need to know is that you're conservative. That's it. And it's like open, automatic hatred.
Right.
You don't deserve to live, basically.
Right.
And that, I mean, it's telling. Could you imagine a conservative woman writing this about meeting a leftist man?
No. Which is like, okay, I get it. Don't date him, obviously.
Yeah.
Like, if this is your worldview, don't date him. We're not encouraging you to date him or be friends with him. But just like the violent nature of this message and like how harsh it is just really, really interesting. Like, if I started dating a guy and we didn't discuss politics for some reason, and 2 weeks later I found out he was liberal, the only thing I would have is clarifying questions.
Yeah.
It would not be like a, get out of my face, you disgust me, blah, 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 I'm going to Reddit to write about this experience and F all liberal men and all this stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's wild.
PragerU tweeted a thought experiment the other day. It was like, what would the world look like if the left got everything it wanted? And when you, against the backdrop of this, if you take this as a reflection of like extreme leftist ideology, it's like it's a world in which there's no place for disagreement.
Yeah.
And that is scary. But anyway, and I'm not to say that this is an indictment on how all of the left looks. There's nuance and there's middle ground there, but that's the point. There should be middle ground, and this is such this is a radical extremist worldview to where you're saying, I don't care about any nuances about someone's thoughts. I don't care about getting to know them. All I need to know is one label and about their political views, and I think that they're evil. I think that they're evil, and that is just. It's unhealthy. You cannot have a healthy society. You got to make space. If you're going to have, people are going to disagree with you, and there's got to be space in the world for that to happen. And it's really scary when you're so locked in to this self-assurance of your morality that you can't even imagine a world where these people are allowed to exist or are on equal playing field with you. It's like,
yeah. The irony of this binary thinking is the fact that they connected initially before any of the conservative conversation came up. And it's like, how can you, like the binary thinking of like conservative, progressive thinking and like one is evil, one is good, and that's it. There are so many other things in this world that you can connect with another individual on than conflating morality with politics. And it's so ironic that they were actually friends prior to even opening up that conversation.
Exactly. It's so wild. And you read this, I just want to make my final point here is when you view the world and view other people as evil, it is going to harm you in the long run. And in just reading this message, I wasn't even like feeling particularly judgmental of her or anything, but I can just feel that she is not a fun person to be around. I can feel that she is not happy. I can feel that she is not fulfilled at all. And when you view people as evil, whether you're a conservative or you are a leftist or you're in the center, when you view another person as evil, it takes energy. It really takes energy to hold that view. It takes energy to express those views. And it takes energy that those people are really not wasting on you and not wasting to do the same. And it makes you an ugly individual. It really does.
Yeah. And I feel bad for her because you're missing out on, you made a friend playing Pokemon Go and a shared interest. And like, imagine how many more friends you could have or how much happier your life could be if you didn't have such stick up your butt about this political stuff and view all these people who disagree with you on certain things as inherently evil. You might have a rich life full of friendships. Look, I play beach volleyball on the weekends, and this is why I'm pretty mum about anything political, mostly because I don't want to get kicked out and cut off. It's not that I'm ashamed of my views, but it's like there are people around that I play with now. I find some that are less judgmental or whatever, and I can open up to them a little bit more. But it really is like living in LA. You got to walk on eggshells with relationships like this because there are people, and like I'm in the position of like, dude, we have a shared interest. Let's roll with this, man. And I hope you don't cut me off, but about my views, I know yours because you're vocal about them. But I'm content to agree to disagree or whatever. But we are shared. We're both human here. Yeah. We both have shared interests. Let's be friends and build off that. We don't have to agree on everything. And that's so much a healthier perspective. And I'm grateful that like I still get to do something I love with people that I disagree with. And I have that as part of my life. And this girl will never have that.
Yeah, Amala, I thought it was really interesting with your take right there and talking about like they're definitely unhappy on the inside, this person. And I don't know why, but the story of Dorian Gray is just coming to my mind. It's like on the surface, it's this pretty pristine, like flawless, like projection of a person. But on the inside, when they look at the image, they're rotting.
Yep.
The energy is zapped. It's just falling apart in pieces. And that, like, based on your point, like that was just running through my mind. I'm like, oh my goodness.
Yeah, it's so true. Like a good mental exercise that I don't recommend you do often is to think of something that truly makes you feel hatred, that truly makes you feel angry, and just think about how ugly your mind becomes in that moment, how it affects you, like your physical, the physical place that you're in, how that affects you, how it affects your heart rate, your stomach, just everything about you becomes this subpar version of what you could be. And that's why it's such a waste of time and space to utilize the mental capacity you have to think about hating other people. It ruins yourself the more that you hate others. And that might sound like a little lefty thing to say, maybe not anymore. Maybe in the past.
I'm getting like Star Wars vibes about how like anger and hate corrupt you.
They really
The dark
do.
side.
They really do. I don't know if that's been looked at in a study or anything like that, but I would imagine that it just ruins the way that your body functions and the way you mentally function.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just in just a moment. Yeah. So try that exercise if you don't believe me, because I believe that is true through and through. Do not waste energy on hating other people. At the very least, try to understand them and, agree to disagree. That's always cool. And play Pokemon Go with people who have dissident opinions to yours.
Yeah.
So wild.
Just popped in my head on that note too. If all your energy is going toward hating people, what turns off? Critical thinking. And you could be using that energy toward constructing arguments or thinking, critically about why you might disagree. What's the nature of their values versus yours? Right. And then you start to find common ground. You start to have a better, even if you can stay on your side, but you have sharper arguments and you better understand yourself, you better understand the other side. And that's a healthier way to deal with things. But if like I see someone who disagree, I immediately go toward hatred and anger and that's like, you're not a thinking person there.
Right.
You're a slave to your hatred, and your mind is a slave to that. And you're not even an individual. You're not in control of yourself. You're just like you're just reacting to what this perception of evil that you have, and it's coming at the expense of you being yourself and being a nuanced thinking, critical thinking person.
It's like a defense mechanism.
Yep. Feelings of hate and evil are not rational, and we like to be rational, ladies and gentlemen. And I think that's where we end today's show. I think that's a good note. It's a good thing to take forward in our lives. Thank you guys so much for watching. Please like, subscribe, click the notification bell to be notified every single time we go live. That is Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 3 p.m. Pacific, 6 p.m. Eastern. Fill out the survey in the description down below. Let me know what you think about the show, what guests we should have on, what you want to see, what you don't want to see, and input your email at the end to be signed up for the Unapologetic email list, where you'll get updates from me, an exclusive monthly video, access to our Discord, and the first to know when our clothing line comes out. Again, guys, thank you so much for watching. What did we say? Boys, girls, ladies and gentlemen, Chads and Stacys, incels and femcells.
Any advice?
Don't forget to use your turn signal.
Ooh, good one.
Good one. Bye,
Separate
guys.
your dark and white laundry.
Anything, Scott?
Got nothing.
On the spot.
Sometimes you've got nothing, and that's good advice as well. Bye, guys.